Welcome to this online event. My name is Hansek Denzler and I'm the Managing Director of Interaction in Switzerland. High-performance edge applications need the cloud for processing, storage, and machine learning. They need data processing close to the location where data is generated to deliver intelligent real-time responsiveness. In the coming hour, you will see how AWS Outposts helps to move the necessary soft and hardware to the edge location and what role 5G technology and the right data center need to play to make the setup a success. Three experts highlight what AWS Outpost has to offer, what technical challenges need to be tackled, and what role colocation plays in a successful distributed setup. I wish you a great event and many interesting insights. We will now start with Ethem Azun from AWS, who will cover the technical basics of this solution.
So my name is Ethem Azun. I'm with AWS and I'm responsible for the Outpost go-to-market in Switzerland, Germany, and in Austria. And building on what Dara was talking about just a second ago, I will explain you a bit more in detail what AWS Outpost is, what are the typical use cases, and where it's coming from. So why did we came up with this offering as AWS? So perhaps to start with on that one, when we look at today the applications of our customers, we see a very strong move to the AWS cloud, and that's here to stay. On the other hand, though, customers still have a lot of applications that might have specific requirements. For example, applications that need to speak with control equipment. So think about PLCs or devices in the factory floor, or applications that are delivering the next generation AR and VR experiences. Or even in a bank. So think about the mainframe integration that some of the applications that require. Those type of applications usually come up with a low latency type of requirement. Or you might have a local data processing need. So think about a large data set that you're not really or you don't really have a good way of putting in the region. And you might want to keep that on-prem in order to reduce data waste or also network cost as well. Or it could be an IoT and AI inference type of application too. So these could be, automated operation systems on the factory floor, but it could also be a real-time patient or medical imaging type of application in healthcare as well. Also data residency. So you have all these organizations who would like to make use of the AWS services around the world, but sometimes in locations where we don't have a region yet, or even if we have a region, they might be subject to a specific IP obligation that they would have to implement a tighter control on the data or those workloads on-prem. And the reality is most of the customers that we speak to, they have all of these type of use cases running in parallel. But the common point is they would like to see the same experience across on-premises and on the cloud. And we recognize the need that starts, first of all, with the infrastructure. So think about the hardware, but also on the operations side. So imagine the possibility of combining what you have in the cloud and on-premise around the same IT operations model. And the same goes for developers as well. The ability to use the same CI/CD processes in the cloud and on-prem, also using the same APIs and same tool set. And all of that with a single pane of glass. And even more importantly, from a business perspective, if you think about the innovations around the services happening in the cloud, the ability to use those services, those core services for your applications on-prem as well. So for us as AWS, the main question is, how can we really marry this old world with the new world around the cloud? And as this is AWS, we have different ways of addressing that issue. We have, of course, the region, and this is definitely where the customers get the most flexibility and cost savings. But then we have on the very far side, where you have little or no network connectivity at all, we have the so-called Snow family type of devices. So these are very portable edge components. They have military-grade security. And these can be used for really fully disconnected and harsh operating environments. So think about outside, on the road, on a plane, on a cruise ship. Those are the type of scenarios. And in the middle, where you are focusing on data residency, latency, edge processing, those type of scenarios, but in a more controlled environment, such as a data center, a co-location, a server room, then you have the Outpost. So what is Outpost? Outpost is a fully managed service from AWS. The right mental model I always say to imagine that is that Outpost is a part of the AWS data center infrastructure that runs behind the firewall, either of a customer or a colocation partner such as Interaction. It's the exact same infrastructure we use in the region from a hardware perspective, but also it uses the AWS Nitro. So that's our virtualization and security control plane that we use in the region to manage millions of virtual machines. It's fully produced, it's tested, it's integrated by us. And once you order, it's also AWS coming on site to do the delivery by our install team. The customer or the colocation partner would provide the electricity, the power, and the cooling and network. We power it up. There's a provisioning process, and from that moment on, you can see this in the region as another resource that you can access and use. The service also includes hardware break fix, and you would use the same support channel with AWS if you run into issues. So that's your technical account manager or the support hotline as well. And once in production, and that's very important, we start monitoring the system from our AWS region, because that allows us taking care of the underlying infrastructure while you can still fully focus on your workloads, as we do in the region as well. And with that, you can also benefit from using the same management tools and APIs that you do in the region. So the Outpost service is around 1.5 years old. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of excitement around this new service. Today, we have around 56 countries that are enabled for Outpost. And this number is also growing quite fast. However, of course, we are not covering everywhere in the region, everywhere in the world, although we are already covering areas where you don't have a region. And for those locations, having a strong partner as Interaction, which has more than 285 data centers around the globe, is a big help and support in order to bring that AWS service experience to yourself or to the audiences that you're working with. So here are some examples of customers who are already benefiting from Outpost. First Bank of Abu Dhabi. They were interested in transforming the end user experience of their customers. And to do that, they wanted to provide better mobile banking solutions. So think about e-wallet or mobile payment type of solutions. At the same time, they wanted to modernize the applications based on the cloud operating model, as well as architectural models. So using, for example, Elastic Kubernetes services. But they were limited with the fact that we don't really have a region in UAE yet. And they wanted to move really fast. So Outpost was a great solution for them, covering both the modernization, but as well as data residency needs that they have in that geography. Another interesting case is Tipico. So Tipico is an internet gaming company based in Germany. So Dara was roughly mentioning this as well. And what they wanted to do was to expand their services in US. And they are using Outpost today to do that. So on one hand, Tipico was able to reduce the latency threefold by just bringing the workloads closer to the end users. So that's a clear benefit. But even more importantly, Outpost really helped them to also find a solution for the data residency issue that they ran into, because in the US, some of the states have specific legislations to keep all gamer data within the state borders. So they could find a solution with Outposts for that as well. And if you look at the benefits, that's really impressive, because they were basically entering the US market 5 to 10 times faster than they were thinking initially, because they didn't have to spend so much time importing their solutions. But at the same time, since they were using the same tools and processes in the region, it was much faster for them to onboard their engineering resources as well. So how does Outpost look? This is it. It's a standard 42U rack. It comes fully assembled, so you don't need to really care about, storage, network, power equipment vendors, etc., to select from, which you would normally do. It looks a lot like a standard data center equipment, but it's an own design from AWS. And why? Because when we are creating this rack, we have redundancy and efficiency in mind. For example, we have rack level DC power supply instead of one for each of the servers. So that gives a much higher reliability and energy efficiency. So we also have redundancy for power, switch, and other essential components in there as well. In terms of the compute nodes, you have also a lot of different opportunities and options to select from. So we have a variety of servers. For example, if you just want to run, I would say, general purpose virtual machine workload type of things, you have the M5 servers. But if you also need a bit more compute-intensive workloads, let's say for media transcoding or ML inference, we have the C5 series of servers. If you have memory-intensive workloads, such as databases or real-time analytics, you can use the R5 families. And if you need a lot of graphics power, so think about, again, ML inference, but also graphics-heavy workstations, CAD/CAM type of scenarios, then you have the G4 servers, and that has 8 NVIDIA Tesla T4 CPUs. And you can mix and match these things in a single rack as well. So you can really create a very powerful combination of server types, really focused on the use case that you want to solve. So it also has a lot of unique security features in it. So it has temporal control built in, and also the nitro keys. So these bring data at rest encryption by default. And also from a compliance perspective, Outpost is HIPAA eligible, PCI SOC and FINMA compliant, and also ISO and CSA certified as well. So it's a great set of equipment. But one of the strongest arguments for Outpost, and one that makes us actually really so powerful, is the fact that it's a connected system back into the AWS region. So I will talk about some of the services available in Outpost in a second, but because of this connectivity, you can basically harness the power of the services that are already available in the region, and you can really build hybrid cloud solutions, which is really what this is all about. And what that also means at the same time, that connectivity is very critical. And you really want to make sure that you have a reliable and strong connection back to the region. An option for there is to do that is Direct Connect, which is a dedicated private network connection between your intranet and our region, and the Amazon VPC. And that not only gives you, better performance and reliability, but it's also about increased security. And this is where working with a co-location partner such as Interaction can provide that, and it's quite essential as well. So this slide just gives you a taste of the services that are available today at the Outpost. So what we did was we basically created a group of services that are most likely to be used for the scenarios that I've described on-prem. That, of course, starts with Amazon EC2 and EBS and S3. So those really cover the core services from a compute and storage perspective. But it also extends to our container orchestration platforms. So think about Amazon Elastic Container Service or Amazon Elastic Kubernetes Service. And also capabilities as well, such as Amazon Elasticache for in-memory caching. We also have a level 7 application load balancer, ALB. We have Amazon EMR for big data processing, and we have Cloud Angel for disaster recovery scenarios. And many companies use these services not only to modernize their applications, but also use it as a staging mechanism to optimize their processes as they are moving eventually to the AWS cloud as well. Also, end of this year, we have announced to bring 2 new form factors to the market. The 2U Outpost with the Intel architecture is one of them, is one of the solutions, and the other one is the 1U Outpost with the Graviton architecture. And they will run EC2, ECS, EKS, and IoT Greengrass as well. So it's really, if you think about it, it's really ideal for workloads that might not really require a very high capacity, as I was talking about before, but also could be placed on locations like maybe retail stores, healthcare facilities, factory floors, etc. So for them, this is really great. And the last thing I would like to talk about, also building up on what Dara said on the telco side of things. If you think about the benefits of 5G in general, so all the performance and reliability because of the COPS concept, the stateless architecture, the network slicing, and so on, the main benefit is of course, it helps you to offload compute capabilities from the end user mobile devices to edge compute devices. So that enables a lot of new scenarios that weren't really possible before. And Dara was mentioning some of them just a second ago. And that's quite interesting for industries like manufacturing, for healthcare, smart cities, automotive companies such as driverless car. And as a part of that, back in April, we announced with Dish, which is a leading carrier in US, that we will deploy the first standalone cloud-based 5G network in the United States. And we will do that by using a combination of Outposts, AWS local zones, and the AWS region as well. So that will help a lot for the adoption of both 5G public and private spectrums. So that's one example of in the telco space where we really make this a reality. Thank you.
So as you saw from the other presenters, what I would like to address is those actual use cases. So the use cases you see that can be possible or met in terms of an opportunity here, in terms of how cloud, edge cloud, the colocation centers for interaction, placing outposts there, for example, along with coupling that those features of 5G and how 5G is not just as 4G plus one, but also 5G is more than that. It's also that now the network can become part of the application development process to enable those specific use cases. And this is kind of 3 application use cases I'm going to show you today. But let's get just a summary on. So my name is Darragh Grealish from 56K Cloud. I work there in terms of the cloud development, one of the co-founders as well. We've been around for 4 or 5 years, so I'll show you later in the presentation a bit about us and our background. But let's get stuck into kind of the next generation of 5G killer applications. So I'm going to look at 3 use cases 3 use cases across 3 verticals, specifically in connectivity markets in terms of the financial sector and everything, and then Industrial 4.0, as well as looking at what are those 5G edge applications that are going to really bring cutting edge application services and value added services into the industry 4.0 IoT market. And a lot of this is all about, the technologies we've seen in the last 5, 6, 10 years in what cloud and cloud regions have developed. What we're doing is we're extending that into this common control plane. And then also finally, the building blocks behind that, in the telco industry, so we've seen recently in the last few weeks, all the announcements at MWC 21 in Barcelona. We were part of the Cloud City booth there, and it's clear the agenda is that telcos have to go cloud, public cloud, and bring that public cloud technology into their networks and enable the 5G technology in the same way as the public cloud providers are doing. So we're going to also look at how this is a key component to enabling actually the 2 other use cases on the left. So why edge cloud and 5G? Well, to simply put it, today what we have is our applications, a lot of the mobile phones and normal desktop services we see today, which is essentially see the connectivity as just a tunnel to the internet, and this is just a black box, and we have access to the internet over whatever medium we have, Wi-Fi, fiber, 4G, just do a 4G hotspot, for example. And behind that, there's no guarantee or compute, and we have to layer solutions on top in order to build that segmentation of the network, to build security and all this kind of stuff, for example. And then we also have the region context of where we have connectivity from global connectivity centers. So this is like AWS regions, an example, where you have this huge concentration of data centers which have focused primarily on building tools that orchestrate and allow programmatic access to the platform so that the application developers can actually consume resources as a service. And so this, and one of the key kind of USPs are, concentration of why this is so good is because, and the adoption of public cloud is simply because it's very accessible. It's very easy to just take out a credit card, log in, get your API keys, and start developing and start building those use cases. You don't need to buy servers. You don't need to think about virtualization. Now you don't even have to think about containerization. You can go straight to no code, serverless kind of way. So how do we stretch those technologies into the specific use cases beyond just mobile phones and desktop applications and so forth, but into that really industrial use case? And that's where edge cloud comes in, and outposts, and how outposts can be co-located where those specific use cases that require guaranteed bandwidth, guaranteed latency or low latency, and they need that kind of private network connectivity, not just VPNs layered on top of existing network access. And coupled with 5G, then you're going to get this. We're going to look at later at network slicing connected into the edge cloud. So the end result is that you'll have global edge cloud deployments where we see today, along with edge cloud enabled by technologies such as Outpost, extending the AWS single control plane into those features of network of 5G. And this can be in the context of private 5G as well as outdoor and indoor. And so this is the idea of the green box, for example. So what's important behind this enablement of new technologies? Well, it's simple. The comparing what you can do in public cloud today is a lot of solving existing problems and existing use cases where it's been challenging to migrate, and there's a lot of IT transformation. But when you're coupling these now new innovative technologies in the context of cloud, what you're ending up is getting to this what we call adjacent possible. And adjacent possible is key word. I recommend reading this book from Steve Johnston. It's about where do good ideas come from, and one of things that he resonates there very, very clearly is it's characteristic of great art. So it needs to be surprising and inevitable, and it needs to ring in those people. And so once you and this pre-maps, it's not only you're able to kind of pre-map those innovations, but you need those tools in order to be part of that journey in there. So totally recommend going check out that podcast and also the book. So let's get into those killer apps. So as I mentioned, in those sectors, we'll look at 3 use cases in the domain of financial services, Industry 4.0, and 5G, over-the-top applications. So what are those killer use cases? So in the context of Industry 4.0, you might have machine-enabled tools where a machine builder is selling these special tools, or robotics manufacturer like KUKA, for example, is selling those robots with extra third-party services on top or their own offering. Those services are connected to the public cloud. But then in order to expand that capability, they need to take that same technology like Outpost into the factory floor or close enough that there's guaranteed network access. Like in the example from Platform Digital, where this from Interaction, you have this global footprint of guaranteed connectivity and connectivity as a service as well. And then also coupled with indoor 5G, then what you're doing is you're allowing that machine manufacturer to not just think about every specific use case in every customer factory floor that they have to go to, but you're building on common technologies that allow 5G operators to standardize on their offering, and then developers build on top of that global standardization of their offering. Then in MVNOs, we're looking at the 2 major shifts, like I mentioned in Mobile World Congress back in July, is that you're seeing now Open RAN and the O-RAN Alliance really pushing towards a standardization, decoupling of all those telco stacks. A lot of that is based on software, which can be replatformed on top of Outpost, and not just co-located on some random servers that you have to just present or maintain along your region, but you can also maintain those the same way you maintain your public cloud. And then coupling that, then that allows them to build that private 5G networks into those other markets. And then financial services, last but not least, those connectivity services. So you see those connectivity hubs. How do you bring your compute into those connectivity hubs that you essentially only need for that purpose of connectivity, and the rest is in public cloud, and those compliance requirements that say you need to have certain specific data. So looking at industrial machines, for example, what we see is, like I said, you have maybe a connectivity vendor placing those 5G antennas in the building. They would use this connectivity. The various different third parties that are operating in this factory floor would use this connectivity as augmenting their solutions, like advanced URP ingress data, to the cloud and back, but also doing some localized computational, heavy data computational in the factory floor that required an asynchronous or synchronous kind of requirement with the machine. And this creates this what we call MEC opportunity, so this multiple access edge compute opportunity that allows them to develop their advanced, their value-added services on top of machines that are already present in the factory floor. And so having that common compute platform access means that they can think more about the data they're getting from the machines and the sensors they're working on, and less about the infrastructure to support that. Like for example, in this use case. So if you break that down technically, what it would look like is you'd have your machine out here on the left side. You'd have a developer who's looking at both the programmatic programming the machine, at the same time he or she is programming the edge. The connectivity provider would be also providing value-added services from a connectivity perspective in the middle. They could run on AWS Outposts, colocation centers or Interaction, for example, as well as they would properly operate the private 5G network they're providing for that customer on the same actual hardware, because you can create those isolated environments inside the cloud and cloud technology, and then the region up, the global region above. And this has many locations, but at least what you're doing is you're decomposing your application across the physical deployment of it. But looking into telco, Open RAN, and the 5G focus, so I'll give a brief overview on this. As I mentioned, I touched on parts of it. But one of the key reasons why it is a huge transformation shift there is because Open RAN now is becoming a reality. A lot of operators have to shift what we call from not just 5G as a radio access, your phones are talking to a 5G antenna and then talking to a 4G core, but what they're doing is they're allowing you to now subdivide that network for specific enterprise use cases. And also they're moving towards standalone, which means they have to redeploy their entire stack. So it's quite big, but here's a kind of a high level overview. But an operator could invest in their major kind of global deployment that is not latency sensitive operations like CRMs and things like this, control plane operations to 5G network in the global AWS regions. Then if they're an MNO or mobile network virtual operator is operating globally, they could then provide outposts inside those colocation centers that are physically close to those antennas for supporting their customer base. And the demand also changed from an event perspective, because we see a lot of people now moving, out of cities and working in rural areas. So capacity requirements in these economic centers is becoming less. They're very event driven. And that also gives you the elasticity of the AWS cloud at the edge. And then at the same time, you have the distribution units in the sense of the antennas. So this shows kind of clearly how you see the decoupling of the various different telco services that support the rack. I won't get into all details of those because that requires its own kind of webinar, honestly. But you can see how a lot of this middle stack here is being kind of replaced in software. And now that because of that, reshuffle on top of software means that there's autonomy on top of what kind of hardware they can run on. So let's get into RegTech. So I'm going to touch on specific focus in terms of data and connectivity and why, over the years, financial providers and banks particularly have invested in creating a lot of interfaces, different markets and payment processors. And so a lot of them have their own, what they call connectivity hubs, where there's a huge implementation globally of, not just globally, but also regionally, where there's certain connectivity they need from like SIX payment services or BlackRock for market stuff. If you're a family office or if you're a private equity company managing portfolios, there's a huge amount of infrastructure behind that would have built up over a number of years. And replacing this is a challenge, not just technically, but also those companies have to evolve towards cloud, at the same time. And if they're not ready and they say just provide us a virtual machine, but that financial service provider wants, well, we're already restacking on, for example, a cloud provider like AWS. We're in a colocation center like Interaction. And then it says, well, you still need virtual machines. And then there you go. Here's Outpost, single control plane across your edge and in the public cloud. And so it's a stepping stone in a sense, because this market doesn't move fast. It needs to gain confidence. It needs to gain acceptance, and not just technical acceptance. That's actually the easy part, honestly. But the second shift I wanted to add here is private 5G networks. Why is that important here? Because a lot of the operations in these businesses are not necessarily have to be desk bound anymore. They can be operated anywhere. There's no lab to go to, nothing to manufacture. It's simply Outlook meetings and a lot of data analysis and working with clients and meeting prospects and stuff. So even the office can actually be augmented as a kind of unlimited workplace in a sense behind 5G. And then those private 5G networks can connect into those connectivity hubs with those edge cloud deployments supported by Outposts globally. And I see a huge shift there, and that's why having this, like if you look into the dynamic fabric of platform digital and interaction, and then private 5G networks, coupling that together will be very interesting use case coming up in the future. So we have like a reference design behind this, showing how Outpost is implemented in certain services are decoupled, particularly on, like, say, containers and databases and RDS there you see in the Outpost. But then at the same time, connecting that local gateway down to those connectivity providers in a kind of meet me room, which would already be there, because otherwise all those connectivity providers would have to pull in their own connectivity into the AWS cloud. Why not bring the AWS technology that supports only those specific operations for that connectivity? And then you have that direct connect going back to the region. So that's how it addresses data residency component and also the connectivity component. But what's making this possible? What's the essential building blocks behind this? And so to kind of wrap up quickly now, what I want to show you is, well, you've got like almost two kind of roles, big ecosystem roles at the moment, where you have a developer developing apps up in the public cloud. It's very accessible for them. So you see a lot of leading applications because the technology they're building on is leading that revolution as fast as they can, as fast as they're motivated to develop. So you break down those technical and contractual boundaries and allowing them to make it very accessible. That's what public cloud has really built on, and it has become extremely successful. And then again, in the applications industry, and IoT and everything, they have a very good, strong kind of ecosystem there where it's very easy to develop, and those vertical disruptors that we're trying to enable need to be able to access the connectivity that they require, because their applications now become more specific on those hard requirements of connectivity. And this is coupling where you want to couple the Outpost, the edge cloud, with those features of 5G and getting into those features. So 5G not just comes with just I need basic internet access or IoT, narrow band. I can ask for slices of the network, like a pizza. I can ask for certain things on my pizza, and that slice contains certain features like ultra reliable low latency, massive IoT for indoor or outdoor, and then they also, when we use every day, the enhanced mobile broadband, but enhanced mobile broadband in the context of what am I accessing on the other side? Is it a business application? Is it something behind a VPN? Is it something that's exposed on Outposts? And so what we need to do is bring those two ecosystems and extend them into seeing network connectivity as an asset. And this is where we see like the likes of Platform Digital coupled with the Outpost offering, and customers bringing their 5G operators to create that guaranteed access, like I showed earlier. So anyways, who's 56K Cloud? To just give you a quick overview of who we are. Well, we essentially focus on three things: we solve, build, and execute. And for example, we try to solve that market problem for customers, so for innovators, to really break down those technical barriers, as I mentioned before. We also build that technical strategy that is aligned with their business strategy. Now, when I talk about technical strategy, I'm talking about what are the steps that you need to do in order to enable those developers to address your business, and how can those developers continue to innovate without having silly kind of contractual or technical boundaries, and also lack of maybe knowledge of, like, for example, these features of 5G are available. And then when we get into actually coaching, we get into that execution and how to enable those new technologies and how to build confidence and acceptance on those new technologies to accelerate your technical strategy. So how can you work with us? Well, in this context for Edge and Cloud today, we offer, together with Interaction, AWS Cloud Engineering, Consulting, Migration. We also have a Cloud Native network where we kind of source those technologies that you need in that Cloud Native ecosystem. And from that ecosystem, then we also build a community like today with the webinar you see today. And we create that transformation, developer advocacy and relations to create excitement, and also to create, validation and rapport, and that you're not alone in this challenge. We're here to help and enable. And we have created a kind of an onboarding program, Cloud Journey to Edge Cloud. This encompasses things like the Outpost Lab, Workshop Lab, where you can start with your hybrid cloud, understanding how you're decoupling those services. What's the challenges at the edge that you need? Why are those services in the edge? Could some of them be in the public cloud? But at the same time, if they need to be on the edge, how do you decouple that application so that it makes best benefit of the technologies? Then once there's an MVP and POC done, then we're also working with the customer to bring them through that technical implementation, understanding those requirements, the capacity planning, what kind of Outpost configuration you need. And then once this is ordered and you have Outpost implemented, we have it ready, then there's that application migration, migrating from the existing kind of services into the cloud native implementation across the edge. And you're not alone. We keep support and have operations around that. And we see an engagement usually between 6 to 18 months. But welcome to follow up. I'll let the other presenter now present. We'll also be taking questions later at this stream. So looking forward. Please follow our blog, Twitter, and you can also find us on LinkedIn and Twitter on our website. Thank you.
Thank you, Dara, for your presentations. Let me check whether sound is working properly. Perfect. First of all, thank you all for staying tuned. And basically what I've been asked to present today is why are data centers and colocation data centers relevant in relation to hybrid infrastructures and AWS Outposts in particular. You've heard from Dara and Ethem why AWS Outposts can serve particular use cases. And we are very pleased to work with partners like AWS, like 56K Cloud and others to deliver these kind of hybrid services to our end customers. As part of that, we thank AWS and 56K Cloud for joining us on this webinar. And I'm trying to move the slides. And let me allow to do a quick intro to Digital Realty and Interaction for those of you maybe not familiar with the company. Last year, Digital Realty and Interaction joined forces to deliver a truly global platform as shown on the map. We operate in all 6 continents with data centers in many different locations. Many of these locations actually support the requirements of our customers, all the way from hyperscale requirements of the major hyperscale cloud platforms, all the way down to a single rack in one of our facilities for organizations looking to get the right connections into the different cloud platforms or other customers of choice. Today's topic, of course, is hybrid cloud architectures and how we can help. First of all, some stats on the sides that have been shared by AWS. Enterprise apps, 75% are still remaining on-prem today. 71% of organizations deploy in hybrid deployments. So from that perspective, it's a massive requirement that we see in our day-to-day world today. The role we aim to play as Digital Realty is we focus on what we are good at. So we run data centers and we provide hybrid cloud connectivity. We do this extremely well, as also witnessed by yesterday's leaderboard released by CloudScene, where we were recognized as a top 10 hybrid cloud data center provider in all regions and as the #1 in EMEA. And we really believe working with AWS and other partners, we can deliver these solutions better than anyone else, providing enterprises the possibility to move from on-prem data centers to a combination of cloud and co-location. Whether this is in temporary solutions as a landing zone to move legacy applications from on-prem to cloud, or as a permanent cloud-adjacent architecture with truly hybrid features. Of course, this depends use case by use case. What we focus on is providing the right connectivity and the right data centers to facilitate this. And in this particular case, we provide in almost all of our locations direct connect capability, either by housing the exact points of presence of AWS, or by facilitating and extending access via our cloud fabric. Next to that, last year, AWS came to us with the request to validate our locations, and we've done so in many of our locations. So we have now the capability of providing validated data centers and data hubs built and be AWS Outpost ready in many of our locations. We'll share some details there in a moment. So the 3 services that we offer today is our data hub for AWS Outposts, our network hub for AWS Direct Connect, enabling customers to interconnect their private cloud and public cloud. And thirdly, to mention, we offer a service for Swift members, where together with AWS, we've developed a service to offer private key housing in a physical HSM on our facilities. In terms of availability of all these services that sit on top of Platform Digital, globally, we have availability. In the table on the right, I've taken a view on the European presence of these services. As you can see, AWS Direct Connect is available in almost all of our markets that we operate. And most of these facilities in the different markets have been validated for AWS Outposts, so we can deliver these services much faster than in other locations. What this architecture would look like on a very high level would be basically you can deploy your services in your own data center or move it onto Platform Digital in any of our facilities. In the same facility, you can deploy an AWS Outpost, connect it via the Fabric and AWS Direct Connect into the region of choice or regions of choice, and at the same time make use of the community. And what we mean by that is we have many different carriers, ISPs, IT service providers like 56K Cloud that you can leverage to deliver a truly hybrid environment end-to-end from a single location. So why does co-location of AWS Outpost matter? I think there's 6 key topics. First of all, it allows customers to move their workloads from on-prem data centers to purpose-built facilities that we run, and therefore reduce OPEX and eliminate CAPEX. Secondly, we provide reliable connectivity back to AWS region, either via Direct Connect or via the Fabric. Thirdly, we have validated our locations to reduce complexity and time to market. We offer edge connectivity via a large community of carriers and ISPs to the edge, as well as mobile networks. And this seems like an obvious one, but high density power requirements, AWS Outpost comes in 3 increments, 5K, kW, 10 and 15. All of these can be offered as standard in our facilities, which is of course not the case in all data centers around the globe. And finally, we provide a future-proof, flexible foundation for your IT infrastructure. And to make that specific, we've applied that to Platform Digital. We believe we can do an excellent job in bringing this to you in all of our locations, based on the fact that we have Direct Connect, the Outpost validation, and all the different connectivity options. And just to illustrate that by Switzerland as an example, and thanks to the Swiss team for hosting this webinar, our Swiss facilities in Gladbach, Zurich are the only location in Switzerland that offer AWS Direct Connect in combination to AWS Outpost validation. So from that perspective, it gives a very clear statement of where we add value to the community. This is the last slide I would like to leave you with, and just to look at the customer journey to hybrid cloud utilizing AWS Outposts. Together with 56K Cloud, we can deliver design workshops at the front end to design the solution fit for purpose for your particular use case. We are looking at developing a test lab in Switzerland, allowing you to test AWS services ahead of actual deployment. So should you have interest, please get in contact with 56K Cloud, Dara, or ourselves. Thirdly, we have validated our locations, reducing significantly the time to market from months to weeks, allowing you not to have to do this site survey. And finally, leveraging our years of experience in running data centers, we can deliver and deploy AWS Outpost in our facilities and run them better than anyone else in the industry. And working with 56K Cloud or other partners, you can migrate your applications and contract for the support and operations of the ongoing running of these outposts in our facilities. Of course, this is delivered in collaboration with AWS, as AWS Outposts is a fully managed service. So we really believe that this solution could bring value to many customers for their particular use cases. I thank you for your interest and would like to hand back to Thomas.
We're still alive.
We're still alive and kicking, yeah. I've got some questions from the auditorium.
So,
and I would go with the first one, which is they're keen to understand how we see the timing and market uptake of 5G services and how this compares between the US and European market. So I hand it over first to Ethem.
or Dara, you want to? I think the question was addressed to Dara. So,
okay.
Yeah. So, well, my opinion 2 weeks ago would have been different than the opinion after being in MWC, because in MWC, I think it's accelerated, and Switzerland has a huge opportunity to really technically lead in the adoption of 5G, simply because there's about 90% of the population covered by 5G coverage, so there's a huge use case. Over in the US, you see there's a larger use case for private 5G in the sense of building it into buildings and everything, because specifically what Ethan mentioned regarding those factory use cases, where the ICT providers inside those large factory installations, they want to service out now the connectivity to a service provider. It also goes to show, I've seen this also with COVID responses, where large companies who have now 50% of their employees working remotely, they want to provide, here's your unlimited desktop experience, your workplace, your digital workplace. It works on 5G, and then in the office they have also the 5G indoors. So the use case is different. So yes, I think Europe is leading the way in terms of technology adoption of 5G from a subscriber's perspective, but then in the US, from a more enterprise perspective, Industry 4.0 and everything, like we see Dish Wireless, a lot of the use cases for Dish Wireless is going to be enterprise customers, and they're going to have those bespoke requirements.
yeah. And what I can maybe add on the top of what Dara said, I mean, we have a lot of telecoms in Italy, in Switzerland, Germany, Spain, who are actively working with us on this space for the public spectrum as well as for the private spectrum, which is just an addition because private spectrum existed anyways. One interesting example on that one, during the Hannover Fair, for example, we announced an offering with a partner as well, with T-Systems, a private 5G campus edge solution. And we see a lot of other partners who are also going in this direction, taking Outposts as a platform for 5G core, but then building those services on the top of it in order to enable Industry 4.0 scenarios in the manufacturing space. So there's a lot of movement in that space.
Cool, thank you. Next question. What are the benefits of placement of AWS Outposts in locations where AWS Direct Connect is available? I would hand this question over to Rutger first.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. And I think to some extent I touched on that in the presentation. Personally, I would love to pass the question to Ethem, because he's seen some of this happen. So it would be great to get his view on this.
So, as I was saying in my presentation as well, connectivity is a very critical piece for Outposts, because it's not only a great technology and infrastructure. What really brings the most value out of this is to combine the services which are in the AWS region with the services that you are running on an on-prem location, closer to the edge, closer to the devices, closer to the use case and end users you would like to manage. If you can combine it and harness the complete power, that's the best and optimal case. And for that, of course, I mean, it's a given that you need a very good network and stable connection, which is secure and reliable. And therefore, although Outposts can work with Internet VPN as well, we would definitely recommend a direct connect. And if you have a partner such as Interaction who provides that for you, you have a big advantage, obviously.
Thank you. One more question regarding the importance of the AWS region. Is AWS Outpost relevant in countries where an AWS region is present or soon to be launched? Who wants to shoot first?
I think based you, Ethan, but I have some comments I can add.
Yeah. So, I mean, absolutely, because again, when we think about Outposts, it's really there to address 3 different type of use cases, right? Data residency is one of them, which is quite obvious, especially in Switzerland. But then if you get to region, you are basically solving a big portion of that problem. That is correct. That doesn't mean that, even if you use a regulatory issue, there might be some processes within the company, some corporate policies that might still require you to keep applications and the data on-prem. So, and for that, Outpost is still a good solution. But then there are other use cases. So think about latency and local edge processing. In any type of manufacturing scenario, if you need a latency around 4 or 5 milliseconds, which is quite common if you think about the MES world, for example, and all the processing applications around that, the region might work or it might not work. So you really have to think about and test if that latency is going to work. If the region is working, that's perfect. You should definitely go for the region. But for the cases that might be too much in terms of latency, or again, if you want to keep the data on-prem in order to do a lot of big data crunching and not move everything to the region in order to reduce the waste and also the network costs that might incur, Outpost still becomes an extremely good and valuable solution. And we see that, by the way, already in Germany, where there's a region, but there are a lot of manufacturing, specifically manufacturing and automotive companies who are looking into Outposts as an alternative while still using the region for other type of use cases. So, Dara, if you want to add.
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, these are certainly the technology benefits. And once, like, if you did one of our workshops there, you would see how we would unpack those that solution to understanding what technology brings with that. But even the greater advantage, even I've seen, is that it's also the single control plane. The fact that now you have a technology solution in the public cloud, and now you have the same technology solution on the edge. So you're swapping out that otherwise stuff that you already have on the edge, like because you clearly know already, I want to have this infrastructure locally, but again, it's the human capital cost. You're breaking down that human capital cost by standardizing on cloud native tools at the edge.
And maybe just to add to that, we see it in real life. So as Ethem mentioned, we do see uptake in locations where there is no region available yet, but we certainly see a lot of uptake also in locations where a region is available. So it's certainly a complementary service to the AWS region or to Snowball. So these services can sit next to each other and all form part of a holistic solution that we would love to discuss in one of these workshops together with Dara and ourselves to bring forward.
Thank you. I think we answered all questions we got. And I would like to thank you for the great presentations and the insightful views and information on AWS, 5G, and what role the data center plays. And I hope everyone in the audience enjoyed the event as thoroughly as I did. Thank you very much. And thanks for not losing patience during the technical difficulties.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll have also recording available as well.
Yeah.
As well.
Afterwards, we will put the recording and the slides available into the chat of this event so that you have exclusive access to all this content afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you all for...
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and thanks for the patience today, the technicians. All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. Thank you for your time you've spent with us. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation as much as I did. I wish you a very nice day, and if you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to one of the 3 presenters as highlighted here. Thank you very much. See you soon.